Hello, I'm back, guys. Back at it again, like a crack addict with a pen. And where have I been? None of your fucking business. Today, we're not talking about that terrible, dirty, horrible drug meth. We're going to be talking about that magical, miracle working, happy inducing plant of marijuana that has no negative side effects. And it does nothing but help people in their lives overcome the challenges and tribulations of life. Yes, today this weed. God, see, and since I smoked so much weed, I fucking can't even speak right. This video is gonna be about weed, and yes, the quality is really trash. It's an Obama phone. Your favorite content creator uses an Obama phone, so make sure this next election go and vote for Trump, so you don't ever have to see me make a video again. Hey, that was kind of good. All right, now we're getting our mojo back. All right. So it seems like there's two schools of thought when it comes to marijuana videos and channels on YouTube. You usually have the guy that has like the weed plant in his avatar, and it's like the logo of the channel, and like all the fucking thumbnails are like with fucking huge red eyes, and they would be nothing without weed. Weed gave them everything. It's their medicine. It's like it's their best friend, and I don't want to talk shit on your best friend, but sometimes your friend isn't good for you. And that's why I think this video is important to make, because not only am I going to be talking about the positives of marijuana, but I'm also going to be talking about the negatives, which I don't really hear too much of. And the two schools of thought on YouTube seems to be like, either you're all for fucking weed, it's the most amazing miracle drug ever, or you're an ex recovering from hard drugs and you have a stick up your ass and you don't have fun anymore and you fucking hate weed. That seems to be the only two schools of thought. I'm neither of those, surprisingly. No, I'm actually in the middle. I think that everyone is different, and to throw people in a box and say, hey, if you smoke weed, you're gonna end up like this. No, that's bullshit, and that's a really dangerous way to think. So let's first talk about the positives of weed. For me, it makes everything magical. And I'm a guy who's always wanted to be an artist. I've always have some kind of failing YouTube channel going on. I'm always trying to get something artistic going on. And I hit a lot of ruts, like when I just can't think of anything creative. And weed always seemed to stimulate that and give me ideas, almost as if someone outside of me placed these ideas in my head. I'm like, where did that come from? Thank you, weed. It lets you look at things in a different perspective. There's been a lot of times in my life where I'm really fucking angry and I don't know why, and then I'll go smoke weed, and then I reflect on myself and I say, that's why I'm angry. And I think it's a really good tool for that, and it's probably why it was put here on this earth, is as a self-reflection tool. And there's, I'm a musician, so there's been times in my life where I would be working on music all day, recording music all day, and then I would do that sober, and then after the recording session, I would smoke weed and I would listen to the music, and it was almost like as if I was somebody else listening to the music for the first time, and I was listening to somebody else's music, and I could just say, all right, this bridge right here needs to be a little longer. This right here would sound really good with an extra guitar layered over it, something like that. It really, really helps for that. And I think a reason why people are so positive for weed is because it really doesn't fuck you up at all. You can still hold a job. You can still be a good mom and dad and smoke pot. Not like meth or alcohol. When you get into those things, everything else falls to the side and you can't do that stuff anymore. But I think people really downplay the effects of weed, and the reason why I think they do that is because when you're smoking weed 24/7, that becomes your normal, and being stoned becomes normal. And that's really the problem that I have with weed, is I just am not capable of smoking it moderately. And I think the people that are able to smoke it moderately, they got it right. They're going to get the full benefits from it, and they're not going to experience as much as the negative stuff. So if you're able to moderate it, my hat's off to you. I'm really jealous of you. I wish I could do that, and I've tried to do it over and over and over. Oh my God, I've tried to do that so many times. And my addiction, if you don't know, I was addicted to, still very addicted to meth. I'm not using it, but I was addicted to meth for over 20 years and have been trying pretty much most of my life to get sober off it. And my cycle of addiction always starts off with weed. Always, every time. I never relapse going straight to meth or going straight to alcohol. It's always weed because I can downplay it in my mind. I can say, yo, you got your job back, you got the girlfriend back, you got the car back, you got all these things back. You're cured, Andrew. You can smoke a little weed. And usually when I'm having these thoughts, it's a time in my recovery when I'm not going to meetings, I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to do to stay sober. So I become what they call a dry drunk. And I become very angry and miserable, and I start lying, and I start pretty much acting like I did when I was on drugs and alcohol, but I'm not taking drugs and alcohol. So once I start feeling like that, I need relief, man, because who wants to be miserable all the time? I know I don't. So I start smoking weed, and it gives me that relief, and it's almost like a feeling as if I'm coming home again, almost as like if you went off to Vietnam, you know, I got Nam flashbacks up, and then you come back to America, and it's like, oh, home sweet home. This is what I've been missing. Oh, I can't believe I went out into that crazy world and shit was so crazy over there. This is where I belong. Like, that's how it feels when I haven't smoked weed for like a year and then I come back to it. It's like, welcome home, Andrew. Where have you been? It's, I finally feel comfortable in my own skin. And as you guys can tell right now from me talking and moving all around, and like, I'm not comfortable in my own skin. I'm 36 years old. I still I struggle with that a lot. So when I smoke weed, I feel very comfortable in my own skin. And it just makes being bored okay. And when I'm in that point in my recovery where I'm not working my program, I'm really miserable, I'm bored a lot because all I'm doing is probably going to work and then isolating in my room. So it makes isolating in my room feel okay. And that's okay. You know, like, that's not the worst thing in the world, like isolating in your room and smoking weed, whatever. The problem with it is it makes me content with it. So I stop doing things that could actually make me naturally feel good, like making these YouTube videos. I don't want to do this if I'm smoking weed. And I notice when I don't smoke weed, when I wake up in the morning, I have this anxiety, and I used to smoke weed to quiet that anxiety and quiet that voice in my head. But that anxiety and that voice in my head that I feel in the morning is actually a good thing, because that's what motivates me, man. When I get up, like, I don't have a job, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have money, I need to pay rent, I need all this stuff, and my head is just screaming at me. That's a good thing, because that's what motivates me to go do those things, so my that voice stops screaming at me. But when I smoke weed, it turns that voice off. So then I don't go chase the job, I don't go chase the money, I don't go chase those things. But anyways, back to when I haven't smoked weed in a long time, I come back to it, and it just has this magic to it, bro. Like, I don't know, when I'm a dry drunk, when I'm depressed and I'm living in depression, I'll listen to like my favorite band, like the Mars Volta, Blink-182, and I'm just like, oh, I've heard this song a million times before. This sucks. Turn the channel, turn the song, whatever. But then I'll go back to that same song when I've just smoked some weed. And it's just like, oh my God, that fucking vocal melody is so good. Oh, that's so amazing. And it just really fills me. It just really makes the art really come alive. And I remember one time, there's this Angels and Airwaves song I like called The Wolf Pack. And I've heard this song millions and millions of times, man. Never really thought anything of it. And then one time I smoked some weed and I read the lyrics to this song, and it hit me really, really hard in the moment. And I just really felt and connected to what the singer was writing about. And I remember I actually started weeping. Like, I straight up started crying. I just was like, these are the most beautiful lyrics I've ever read in my life. They're so incredible. And, that really doesn't happen to me sober. I don't read lyrics to a song and start weeping, It really just helps me realize the beauty and the magic in life that I don't really see when I'm sober. And it's really, really good for that. But the problem with that is I rely on it for that. And the thing is, I'm capable of experiencing the beauty and the magic of life sober. I just have to work on getting happy. Like, it wasn't the weed that made me realize that beauty and magic. It was actually just me being happy. I smoked the weed, I'm happy. Now music sounds good because I'm happy. But the thing is that I'm just starting to realize, and I mean just starting like in the last week or two, I'm starting to realize I can be happy without any substances. And that is a really crazy thought to me and to a lot of you people out there. That's probably like some common sense shit. Like, yeah, no shit, you can be happy without drugs. But I never thought that was possible, me personally. I never thought I would be able to do that. So now that I'm happy, like I'm pretty happy today, when I put on music, it sounds really good to me like it did when I was stoned. So you can actually have these positive benefits of weed without the weed, because see, smoking the weed is great and all, but for a drug addict like me and for a guy like me, I do it all the time, 24/7, to the point where I become dependent on it, which nothing's wrong with that. Weed's super cheap, it's legal. I mean, if you're gonna get dependent on anything, that's probably the one to do. But there always comes that day, maybe I have to go to work and it's like a 12-hour shift and I can't smoke any weed at work. Maybe whatever the reason is, I can't smoke weed. That day will eventually come. I can't smoke weed every day. It's just not how the real world works. At least my real world doesn't work like that. And that day comes, and when that day comes, the irritability, the depression, the anxiety all comes back. And the weed was just a Band-Aid for all these things, and they all come back with a vengeance, with the force, because I've been running from them and I haven't been dealing with them. So they've just been growing and getting stronger inside of me. So that's one of the bad things about it, man, I gotta say. And I know I'm not the only one who feels that way, because I constantly talk to people who smoke weed 24/7. They do it in the morning, they do it in the afternoon, and they do it at night. And I ask these people, how do you feel when you don't smoke weed? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I've never not smoked weed. They're like, it's my medicine. Like how people have their depression medicine, weed is my medicine. And, the doctor didn't prescribe it to them. They prescribed it to themselves. So, take that with a grain of salt. But when I ask them how they feel, they say the same thing as me. They say, I'm very angry. Like, if I didn't smoke weed, I would be snapping at everyone. And I start to think about it, and I'm like, well, they claim they're not addicted to it. But, like, that's what a heroin and meth addict sounds like. When I was really strung out on meth, bro, if I didn't have my meth, I would be fucking snapping at you. I would be angry. I wouldn't want to leave the house. I wouldn't be able to get anything done. If I didn't have my meth, things got really ugly. And that's how these potheads sound. So, yeah, to me, it does sound like these people are addicted to it, but there's this thing with weed. It's so popularized, and it's so popular in culture today, that there's this common misconception that you can't be hooked on it. Like, oh, you can't be hooked on weed. Like, that's dumb. But like, I'm from Texas, and I would risk my freedom to smoke weed, which is what a drug addict does. That's drug addict behavior. About 15 years ago, I got caught with a joint of weed in a school zone, and I got put on a year of probation in Texas, and I got drug tested. And if I failed one drug test for weed, I would have to do the remainder of my probation in county jail. So that means I was looking at spending a year in county jail for a joint of weed. That's goddamn ridiculous, I know, but that's what the law was back then. It was a Class A misdemeanor because it was in a school zone. But I would still smoke weed, and I would do all the tricks at probation. I would get the fake piss, or I would just like have some excuse of why I can't check in that day, whatever. But I would always be sweating, the night before you got to check into probation, and you're dirty, bro. You can't sleep. You're worried you're going to go to jail. You're worried you're going to get in trouble. And all that could have been avoided if I just didn't smoke weed. But not smoking weed wasn't an option. And to me, that is very, very negative behavior. I'm sorry, that's very drug addict behavior. So people look at weed like it's not as bad as the other things because it doesn't get you as fucked up. But does it? Let's take a look at it, man. When you're stoned 24/7, weed becomes your normal. So when you're smoking it, you don't feel stoned because you're always stoned. So stoned is just normal. But that's how it was when I was on meth, bro. Like, I did so much meth. Like, I would snort a line of meth and then I would go eat and go to sleep because I was so used to being tweaked out that being tweaked out became my normal. So being tweaked out didn't really seem like a big deal to me, but it probably seems like a really big deal to you because you've probably never done it before. So that's kind of how it is with weed, man. I noticed I downplay the effects of weed a lot. When I smoke weed, it really does change who I am. Believe it or not, I didn't always talk like a fucking California surfer. I'm actually from Texas, and I'm a huge conservative, and very good. And I used to be very straight-laced, and before the weed, that it really did change my personality, man. I procrastinate like a motherfucker, even when I'm sober. I just have... You can tell that I'm a fucking pothead. I don't even smoke weed anymore, but you can tell. It really had a drastic effect on my personality. And the other problem with it is, like, man, I work a program of AA to stay off meth and alcohol. And I can't work that program if I'm smoking weed. And not even because they'll have a problem with it, because, like, who gives a fuck what they think? Like, as long as what I'm doing is helping me, that's all that matters. But the thing is, like, if I smoke weed, I'm very content with that, and I feel like that's fixing my problems. So I'm going to stop going to the meetings. And then I can't really go to the meetings because it's all about honesty. AA is all about being honest. It's all about changing old behaviors, and I can't do that if I'm smoking weed. So, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of positives and negatives to weed. And, I started smoking weed when I was 12 years old. I'm 36 years old. I probably like weed more than you do. So if you're a stoner, debate me in the comments, bro. Because I used to be one too. I got the tattoo. I named my son Bud. I named my daughter Mary Jane. I started smoking weed when I was 12. I sound like a preacher, brother mans. But no, sir. I really regret that a lot. I really regret that I started that young because I have a big case of arrested development. A huge case of arrested development, man. I'm just watching my peers and people I grew up with buy houses, buy cars, have families, and I'm still over here struggling, doing the minimum wage thing. And I can't blame that entirely on weed, but brother man's like growing up, anytime anything made me uncomfortable, I ran to the weed. I remember asking this girl out to prom, and I was really like scared of girls in high school. I was scared. I was just a nervous, awkward teenager. I was scared of them. So, like, I showed up to the prom stoned, and that made her mad. And she, ended up not going with me. And anytime I'm ever challenged in life, the first thought in my head is like, oh, we should smoke up before we do it. That's going to make it easier to get through this. I always just feel like running back to weed anytime it gets hard. And that's because I've been smoking weed since I was a teenager, and I just never developed the skills because I was too scared to. I always ran back to the weed instead of developing these skills. So, if you are going to smoke weed, I would highly suggest don't do it until you're an adult because, man, I see these little dumbass kids running around with fucking weed pens and shit, and I hear their conversations on the city bus. They're fucking idiots. And the kids that don't smoke weed are pretty fucking cool and smart. So, I don't know, man. There's a lot of positives for it, and there's a lot of negatives for it. And it's kind of up to you to decide if it's good for you or not. I lied to myself for 20 years saying that I need weed, it's good for me. And come to find out, now that I'm off weed, I'm way fucking happier, dude. Like, I'm such an introvert, and weed just makes me even more introverted. When I go around people now, I want to talk to them. I have a clear head, and I can say things fast, and I'm not always just like, what's it called? Oh, I mean a pizza. You know, like I feel like I'm just sharper up here, and that's making life easier, which makes me happier when life's easier. And I don't know, it's just really up to you guys. You know, it's your life. But I just wanted to put this perspective out there because I don't hear enough people talk about this. And if there's a kid out there who's maybe, I remember when I was 12 years old, there was a thing called Arrowwood.org, and I was really curious about weed because my friends were smoking it, and I went on Arrowwood and I read all these positive things about it, and I was like, damn, this sounds awesome, I want to do it now. But no one ever told me, like, you know, hey man, you're gonna really, really like weed, and you're gonna really, really like it, and you're gonna smoke it for a long time, and you're gonna neglect a lot of things just to smoke weed, but then one day the weed's not gonna work anymore, and then you're gonna be fucked. No one ever told me that. Kids out there, I fucking wish somebody would have told me that, because I would have probably done things a lot different, man. So I'm telling you, weed is really awesome if you don't abuse it, but if you abuse it like I did, it loses its magic. And then it just kind of starts just making you like a depressed, slow person instead of having that spark and that creativeness that it used to give me, man. And I wish I could go back to those days when I would smoke weed and just everything was so vibrant and alive. And it was like putting on a pair of sunglasses and looking at the world for the first time, through a new pair of eyes or something. If that made sense. That probably didn't make sense. But it really loses its magic. And once weed loses its magic, in my case, I don't know about y'all, it never comes back. I mean, I could abstain from it for 5 years, and when I go back to it, it'll be pretty cool, but it won't be that magical experience it was when I was a kid. And that kind of sucks. And Dare always told me, yo, weed's a gateway drug. It's gonna lead to meth, and you're gonna go to prison if you smoke weed. And that's really extreme, even though in my case all that stuff really happened. That's a little extreme. If those DARE programs would have just said, hey, you're going to be 36 years old and your family's going to hate you, and you're going to have no skills. If they would have told me that, I would have been more prone to listen than, the prison and all that extreme cases. But it's getting dark out here, and I'm not comfortable talking in public anymore. I used to be able to do it, but now it's just fucking weird to me. So I'm going to get out of here, guys. But it's good to see everyone again. I hope everyone has a blessed night. I love you guys.